Have you ever thought about how some things, like a bad mood, just seem to spread so easily, while good things take so much effort? Well, it turns out there's an ancient text that digs right into that idea. We're going to look at a fundamental rule about our spiritual lives, and then we're going to see how that rule gets completely flipped on its head. Okay, let's get into it.
So, our story kicks off with a prophet named Haggai, and he walks up to the religious leaders of his day, but he doesn't have a big sermon prepared. Instead, he has a puzzle for them, almost like a spiritual pop quiz.
He starts with this. Okay, so picture a piece of meat that's been consecrated, set apart for a sacred purpose. It's holy. Now, what happens if that holy meat just bumps up against a regular loaf of bread? Does the bread suddenly become holy too?
And their answer is quick, it's simple. It's no, right? Holiness doesn't work like that. It doesn't just rub off on stuff through casual contact. You can't just transfer it like paint. Okay, then Haggai completely flips the script. He asks about the exact opposite scenario. See, back then, the law said that touching a dead body made a person ritually unclean. So Haggai asks, what happens if that person touches the same bread or stew or wine? And boom, again, the answer is immediate. It does. The uncleanness spreads. It absolutely contaminates everything it touches. Do you see the huge contrast here? One of these qualities spreads like a virus, and the other one is totally contained.
And this little Q&A brings us to the core principle that Haggai is trying to hammer home to the people of Israel. And honestly, it's a principle that is just as relevant for you and me today.
Here it is. This is the big, sobering truth. Defilement, corruption, impurity, call it what you want. It is highly contagious. It spreads without even trying. But holiness? Well, that's a whole different ballgame. This chart just lays out the two opposing forces perfectly, doesn't it? Impurity is kind of the default setting. It just spreads by contact. You can think of it like a weed in a garden. You don't have to do anything for it to take over. Holiness, on the other hand, has to be intentionally sought after. It requires a direct, purposeful connection to the source.
See, the people of Israel at the time, they were dealing with failed harvests, with famine, and they thought, oh, this must be an agricultural problem. But Haggai shows them, no, this is a spiritual problem. They were going through the motions of worship, but their hearts weren't really in it. And that half-heartedness, that impurity, was contaminating everything, even their sacrifices to God. This ancient issue actually points to a trap that is so easy for us to fall into today. We can call it the proximity trap.
And this right here is the heart of it. We are so tempted to think that if we just hang around holy things or hang around holy people, some of that goodness will just kind of rub off on us, like spiritual osmosis. But as the priest's already made clear, it just doesn't work that way.
And we can see exactly what this trap looks like in our own lives. We can check off all the boxes, right? We grew up in a Christian home, we go to church every week, we know all the right religious jargon, we might even be serving in a ministry. But all of these things are just about proximity. They're about being near holiness, which is not the same thing as being made holy. They can easily become a substitute for a real, genuine, personal connection with God. So, is that the end of the story? Is holiness always going to be this contained thing while impurity just gets to run wild? Well, for thousands of years, that was the rule. But then, something happens that marks a radical, unbelievable turning point in the story. This is the question that changes absolutely everything. What if someone could show up whose holiness was so powerful, so potent, that it didn't just resist getting contaminated, but actually went on the offensive and overcame impurity? The answer to that question, of course, is Jesus. I mean, think about it. Throughout his ministry, he consistently breaks this ancient rule. He touches lepers, and instead of him becoming unclean, they become clean. He touches dead people, and they come back to life. His holiness doesn't just stay put. It actively pushes back the darkness. It cleanses what's unclean. It brings healing. And this, my friends, is the great reversal. In Jesus, for the very first time in human history, holiness itself becomes contagious. It is an active, spreading, life-giving force that just flows outward from him. Haggai was so focused on the people rebuilding a physical temple made of stone. But the ultimate fulfillment of that whole idea is Christ himself. When his work was finished, on the cross and in the resurrection, a permanent, unbreakable blessing was secured for his people. He became the true meeting place between God and humanity. So what is all this ancient prophecy and its great reversal? What does it mean for us today? Well, it leaves us with both a profound challenge and, at the same time, an incredible comfort.
So the challenge for us is to avoid that proximity trap. We just can't rely on rituals or church attendance to make us right with God. True, genuine holiness flows only from a real connection to Christ. But the comfort here is just immense. Because in Christ we are declared clean. His holiness wins. And it doesn't just stay in Him. It actually overflows through His Spirit to us, making us holy from the inside out.
That promise that God made to the people of Israel once they finally turn their hearts back to Him, that becomes His promise to us. Because of what Christ has done, the curse is turned into a blessing. God isn't just sitting back waiting for us to get ourselves clean. He actively reaches out to make us clean through His Son. And that's really the question to leave with, isn't it? It's a challenge to look past all the external motions of our spiritual lives and ask that gut check question. Are we truly connected to the one source whose holiness is not only perfect, but is actually powerful enough to spread?